Hey everybody, Edo here, and today we are going to be talking about freelance writers, editors, developers, and additional people who can help you in your board game development and Kickstarter and all the like. This is a backer-requested topic, and the focus of the question was really backer-requested from the Season 5 Gaming with Edo Kickstarter. The question was sort of oriented towards that sort of not just artist, not just graphic designer category, but what other categories can you bring in to level up and improve your titles. And so at Pencil First Games, we've used a lot of different contractors and resources over the years for very specific ways to augment and, invigorate our products. And so I think there's lots of opportunities for that. So I think in this case, I'm going to talk a little bit about just some best ways to work with freelancers, and then list some of those categories and examples. And I think that'll get people thinking about the different ways to do it. So just in sort of best practices, right? When you're working with a third-party individual, one, you need to set clear expectations on the deliverable, the work that's being done, and the timeline, right? Getting clear understanding on the deliverable and the timeline will make everything super clear to everybody, and it's a huge part of it. Now, you will want to have a contract, and I'm not adding a contract in here and going through that process, but you want to have clear expectations, timelines, and things outlined with the person who is going to be freelancing for you. The other really important thing, and sometimes you might not have enough information or skill sets to do it exactly, but is to have a brief or a description, a summary of like all the different elements that are going to contribute to what they're doing. Like if they're a writer, it would be like, here's what I'm looking for in terms of the output of the writing, but like here's the art, here are the other elements of the game. You want to prepare somebody with a little package so that they can like kick butt in doing what they need to do for you. I think sometimes a lot of people want to like just have the freelancer, have the graphic, have the a contractor do all that, but if there isn't that basis to begin with, then I think you oftentimes find disconnect or misalignment. If you really don't have it, certainly it's not unreasonable to spend a little extra money to have that writer start like that. If you don't have any world, any history, anything, before getting into like writing the fiction on the cards, have them establish the world a little bit so that you can sort of pull that together and get alignment so that you're coming from the same place. Having that mutual understanding is critical, along with understanding the timeline, right, is payment expectations. When payment, what done is done, like how you know what done is important, and how you handle additional tweaks, adjustments, etc. going forward. Oftentimes, you can have a bad relationship with a freelancer and get through the project, but then you don't get to work with them again, right? So really going out of your way to communicate, set expectations, be reasonable, understand that work takes time, I think is all critical working with a freelancer. So talking about some areas, right? So sort of this request was like, hey, we all know that you can contract an artist for your illustrations, and that all those rules apply. But yeah, absolutely, you can contract an artist for an illustration, and by and large, most of the art in Pencil First Games titles is with a contractor or signed artist. Freelancer, different cases for different individuals, but I mean, it's not as if I do the art and I don't have I don't have any employees, so there's no artist on staff, right? It's just people who are doing art. Then you have graphic designers, right? They're integrated too. They're typically contractors or freelancers. They come onto the project, but those are the things like people are used to saying, do you have an artist? Do you have a contract designer, graphic designer on working on your title, if you're the designer yourself, or perhaps the publisher. But there are many other categories of things that I've leveraged in the past that are really effective. Look, everyone can imagine themselves as a writer and as a world builder and as a person creating characters. But the reality is some people are better at it than others. And certainly over the years, I've worked with individuals on writing initially, and sometimes it's writing or sometimes it's expanding on content. So on The Siblings' Trouble, Andy Ashcraft was involved, and there wasn't a ton of writing in that game, But as we were looking out and thinking about how to extend the story narrative, different beats on the journey cards and the dungeon cards and all of those elements, he helped expand out that content through the different locations. So there was like a baseline, and then I had ideas for other places, but I really wanted somebody who was going to like really dive in and do it. And so it was a little bit of development because it was a lot of mechanics, but there was writing. For Skull Hollow, Seth Johnson just did a ton of story. We wanted backstory for the world. We wanted story for the Guardians and the Foxen and all the different races and everything, and we wanted to be able to talk about now and in the future. And he built out a large volume of narrative, a lot of which isn't actually in the game, but became the source of a lot of nuances in the art and other things going on. So that was contracting out specific artists. Generally speaking, for rulebook editing, I've handled the editing, but as I've proceeded, especially with Skull Hollow, which is huge, Dustin Schwartz was somebody we hired to do the rulebook copy editing, and somebody to go in, structured. And this is something, it's not your graphic designer, it's not your designer, this is somebody who's like a copy editor and a writer, really making sure things are crystal clear, catching edge cases, making sure you're consistent with your language, your punctuation. It's just work that levels things up. So that's another place where we've had additional ones. So a totally different category with the 100 Tori. This is a game that represents Japanese gardens and the Edo period and a variety of characters. And we felt that it was critical to make sure we did a good job representing all of these different elements. And I was a Japanese major in college and lived in Japan for a little while, but like I am not active and expert in history and culture. And so we partnered with Lisa Wilcott, who's living in Japan and I don't remember her credentials, but like a master, I don't remember but like an expert in culture and history of Japan, right? To be involved, to review, to look at assets, to look at texts, to comment on the game, the layout, the pieces, really ensuring that we are properly looking at engaging with that content. Along those lines, also, not really independent contractors per se, but also looking and finding other culture representatives in Japan to review and look at the content to make sure that it was, hitting the beats and notes that we wanted it to in an appropriate way. And so that was a different category of finding a third party. So we have historic accuracy and cultural accuracy. We have copy editing and text editing. We have just writing. We have content development as separate from the actual mechanics, like the fictional content development, expanding, building out more dungeons, more world, more cards. I think another place is Ascension Studios does development for games. And so there have been a number of games where I've hired developers as contractors. So a publisher will have a bunch of developers, and oftentimes I act as a developer. But sometimes you want somebody who can go in and really get the number of plays and do playtest sessions and really drive a volume of revisions on a game at a certain state that isn't quite ready to go. So in the case of the Liftoff expansion, I had a lot of different elements in place, ideas, but hadn't really been like put through the ringer, refined, and I didn't have the time and volume to do like run all those and manage all those and make those tweaks and like do the updates and do another revision and make it cost one more, or cost one less, and just like keep running it. And so worked with John and Sarah to do that. Which was fantastic. They also helped on Skull Hollow, which was a game with so many permutations of combat. We really wanted to just get tons of playtests. I mean, I was playtesting it a lot myself, but just wanted that volume, right? So development as well. So these are all different categories that can offer value. When you get into the Kickstarter category, I mean, there's people who can help run your Kickstarter. There's people who can help marketing, social media, people who are able to help with fulfillment and all sorts of other pieces. But in that category around game design development, who you might bring on your team to help there, I think that's the lion's share. There's also obviously contracting additional designers to help as well, which is sometimes appropriate. Good example of that would be Keith Mateka for Herbaceous and Sunset Over Water. Steve Finn designed those games, but we wanted to include a single player mode, so we found another designer who was interested enough for the single player mode and brought them in for just that specific aspect of the game. And Keith knocked it out of the park, which I'm thrilled about. But like, it's that balance, right? So there's no shortage of people who can help. You need to handle those relationships well, but I wouldn't shy away from getting support. I mean, one of the things that it's important as anyone making anything, right? You want to like recognize your strengths and weaknesses and what you're good at and aspire for greatness. And when you aspire for greatness, you need to be willing to say, you know what? That person over there is going to just do a better job than me on that work. And I'm okay with that. I don't have to be the best person at every job. It's unreasonable to think I would be. I mean, I guess some people were, but I'm certainly not. And being able to bring in those people who are better than you to deliver their specialists, right? These are people who are specialists in what they do, and bringing them in can really take your product or your game or your design to the next level. And you should look at it. And time boxed and managed, it shouldn't be completely bank breaking. Again, if you're like on your own doing your own thing and you don't have any money and you're just trying to if you're totally early in the cycle, like you're super beginner, like you might just be doing it all on yourself or getting people to help who are friends, right? But as you move into that mid territory where you have a little bit of a willingness to spend money to get these support things, you should really be considering that. So hopefully that covered the topic and was interesting. And if not, I'm sorry, but otherwise, thanks for watching. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.